We welcome you and thank you for joining us today for the symposium, Dialogues in South and North American Abstraction. This exciting day of scholarship has been planned in conjunction with the Newark Museum's groundbreaking exhibition, Constructive Spirit, Abstract Art in South and North America, 1920s to 50s. And if all of you have had an opportunity to look at the exhibit, you'll know how exciting and how marvelous it truly, truly is. Organized on the occasion of the Newark Museum Centennial, Constructive Spirit explores the conceptual connections and exchanges that existed between abstract artists throughout the Americas. We are delighted to welcome today's speakers, a distinguished group of both emerging and established scholars who will explore a diversity of issues as seen in the work of individual artists included in Constructive Spirit. We are thrilled to be co-presenting today's symposium with the Colección, Patricia, Phelps, de Cisneros, one of the core cultural and educational initiatives of the Fundación Cisneros. CPPC's educational mission to advance scholarship on Latin American art and to promote excellence in visual arts education is a model in the field. Over the past year, the museum and CPPC have collaborated on a number of education in a model of the field. Over the past year, the museum and CPPC have collaborated on a number of educational initiatives related to Constructive Spirit, including a wonderful teen audio tour podcast of selected works in the exhibition. I would like to especially thank Patricia Phelps de Cisneros, founding chairman of the Fundación Cisneros, and Adriana Cisneros de Griffin, president of the Fundación Cisneros, for their support of Constructive Spirit and especially for today's event. We also wish to thank the other major donors of this exhibition and related programs: Prudential, the museum's Centennial Celebration sponsor; the Henry Luce Foundation, the National Endowment for the Arts, the New Jersey Council on the Humanities, Johnson & Johnson, and the Consulate General of Brazil in New York. We are also deeply grateful for the support we have received from the many lenders, both public and private, who have committed important works to this important exhibit, Constructive Spirit. It is now my pleasure to introduce the curator of Constructive Spirit and our first speaker, Mary Kate O'Hare. She is the Associate Curator of American Art at the Newark Museum, a position she has held since 2007. In addition to Constructive Spirit, she has organized several exhibitions for the Newark Museum, including At the Movies, Edward Hopper's The Sheraton Theater in 2007, and Off the Pedestal, New Women in the Art of Homer, Chase, and Sargent. She was co-curator in 2006. She has taught courses and seminars on 19th and 20th century art at various universities and is an adjunct faculty member at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. She holds a master's and a PhD in art history from Rutgers. Her introduction to the symposium is entitled "We Beg for Exchange." Please join me as we bring Mary Kate O'Hare to the podium.
Good morning, everyone. Intercambio. Nous demandons l'échange. We beg for exchange. This phrase, or some variation of it, was translated into multiple languages and opened nearly every issue of Arte Madi Universal, the mouthpiece of the Buenos Aires-based abstract artist group, the Madi. This call for exchange reflected a desire to connect with fellow abstract artists from around the world. The magazine reported on an international roster of abstractionists and placed reproductions of their work in dialogue. Included among others were artists whose work is on view in Constructive Spirit: Brazilian Geraldo de Barros, U.S. artists like Jean Exeron, George L.K. Morris, and Alexander Calder, and Uruguayans Jose Pedro Cosiliolio, Maria Freire, and Antonio Jorns. This concept of exchange and dialogue is at the heart of Constructive Spirit, as well as today's symposium. The exhibition focuses on geometric abstract movements in Argentina, Brazil, the United States, Uruguay, and Venezuela during the formative decades of the 1920s through the 1950s. Artists from Montevideo to New York, from Buenos Aires to Sao Paulo, shared a belief that the style of geometric abstraction represents a universal language that communicates and embodies a broad worldview. Familiar with pioneering European abstract movements such as constructivism and neoplasticism, these artists reinvented and adapted the geometric language to fit their own visions. While their approaches were diverse, together their work demonstrates abstraction's capacity for both systematic and intuitive approaches, as well as a broad range of goals ranging from the spiritual to the political. Though there are, of course, striking formal relationships among works produced by North and South American abstract artists, I think it is ultimately more constructive to consider the deeper theoretical connections that existed between these works and artists, to dig deep into the ideas that drove the artists' formal choices. And I see the spaces of both the exhibition and today's forum as dynamic meeting places for us to explore, question, and engage with the work and ideas that made abstract art in the Americas distinctive. And like any valuable exchange, we find both parallels and divergences. Common ground can be discovered in artists' desire to communicate universal feeling, harmony, and essential structure, or in their interest in the possibilities presented by viewer interaction and chromatic dynamics. Yet the works included in Constructive Spirit, while sharing a formal vocabulary, often came out of different contexts, that lend works very different meanings. For example, we can compare how some artists use abstraction to confirm a materialist or concrete view of art, while others heralded abstraction's power to communicate deep spiritual or transcendental intents. In organizing Constructive Spirit, I've largely taken my cue from the artists themselves by looking beyond geography to consider the conceptual intentions that link these artists' work. And along the way, it has been very exciting to explore significant moments of direct connection that existed between abstract artists from the Americas, such as the moment that opens the show, which is, of course, bringing alive the connections, the fact that Joaquim Torres Garcia and Stuart Davis exhibited together in New York City at the Whitney Studio Club in 1921. But it's been really interesting to kind of go beyond just that really wonderful moment of connection to also consider how, however, the way that these two artists actually shared conceptual ideas, shared this belief that by turning to the local forms of one's environment, you could create a universal form of abstraction. I also point to the personal and aesthetic ties that existed between artists such as Alejandro Otero and Ellsworth Kelly, who were working together in Paris in the late 1940s into the 1950s. Typically, however, the art of the United States has been treated separately from that of Latin America, and this has resulted in a history of modern art that has largely disregarded parallels between abstract artists from South and North America. Breaking out of a geographical focus forces one to engage in a dialogue with the construction of art history itself. While transnational perspectives have certainly influenced the discourse of art history, as demonstrated, just to cite one example, by the countless exhibitions and books devoted to Americans in Paris, until recently, much of this focus has privileged exchange with Europe, contributing to the fundamental oversight of connections between artists in the Americas. Although art historians have compared Brazilian neo-concrete and U.S. minimal art movements of the 1960s, none have explored the relations among earlier geometric trends. The pioneering work of Cesar Paternoster, who has examined the influence of indigenous American art on both South and North American modernists, is a sole exception. But, as Paternoster acknowledges, this integrative approach, quote, flies in the face of a long ossified historiography based on the bifurcations of American, US, and Latin American art. This division has been further complicated by constructive abstraction's general absence from art historical accounts of modern Latin American and US art. Until recently, Latin American art was represented in the United States by figurative and folkloric subjects that fit northern stereotypes of Latin culture. In the last few years, however, exhibitions such as Inverted Utopias, Avant-Garde Art in Latin America, organized by the Museum of Fine Arts at Houston, and the Geometry of Hope, Latin American Abstract Art from the Patricia Phelps Cisneros collection, organized by the Blanton Museum of Art, University of Texas at Austin, have argued persuasively for the originality of Latin American abstraction and for its rightful place within narratives of modernism.